Stanley Cup final is set, and it just might be more set than most people will think. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates that I hope you'll also check out. Oilers 2, Stars 1, another clunker in a really unremarkable Western Conference final. Edmonton scored twice on the first three shots put on Jake Ottinger, and that was that. It was just basically, other than a couple of nice plays by Connor McDavid early on, that was it. So, I mean, I guess you give the Oilers some credit, but I see this whole series as having been way more about Pete DeBoer not having learned a blessed thing from what Rick Tocchet and the Canucks had done to the Oilers in the previous series. And that was to remind them that they're the Oilers. You know, you go at them hard. You fluster them. You get them off of their game. You don't just not play physical at all. And then whenever you do, you take some kind of retaliatory penalty or whatever and put them on the power play. I mean, it's the exact opposite of how you need to face that particular opponent. And I'm here to tell you that Paul Maurice isn't that guy, and the Panthers aren't that team. And I am not expecting, as a result, much of a final here. I believe that Florida should be and deserves to be an overwhelming favorite in this series. I couldn't care less which team has the best player or even the two best players, because this isn't basketball. I do care for these purposes that one of them is way deeper than the other. One of them has the best top four defense unit in all of hockey. That, of course, being Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, Mikko Mikkola, and my personal favorite out of the group, Brandon Montour. Just love his game. Love his game. The Panthers will have a massive edge, I feel, in terms of forward depth. It's not just taking, like I was suggesting here, McDavid versus Alexander Barkov or Draisaitl against, I don't know, Sam Reinhart or Matthew Tkachuk or whatever. There's just so many more. There's so many more weapons on the Florida side that, in all honesty, even after mentioning the edge up front, the edge on the back end, I feel like it's almost piling on to mention the edge in goal. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky is 10 times the goaltender that Stuart Skinner is. That's not even a debate. Not like Stuart's family wouldn't dispute that. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. But more than anything, as far as, I don't know, a collective hockey factor might be analyzed, I'm looking at a group of Panthers that's just going to be in the Oilers' faces relentlessly, unlike anything they'd see in the West. The closest they came was when Rick Tocchet had the Canucks playing that brand, but the Canucks didn't have that personnel for the most part. They had, the odd Sam Lafferty here or there, and Teddy Bluger can, make life challenging for you. But that's not what the Panthers do. They torture you. They go at your manhood, I mean, this is just a different type of team. And I happen to feel it's the best team. But then I've also felt that since the very beginning of the playoffs, if you've been listening. I'd expected all along that they'd make it to the final again, but I'd also expected, to be honest with you, that they'd get more of a challenge coming out of the West than what they're about to see. I thought that maybe a team like, I don't know, going back to the beginning, like the Golden Knights, because they've got the size, they've got the snarl, they've got some skill, and they're so stingy defensively that it almost doesn't matter who's in goal for them. I thought maybe the Avalanche could do it because of their big boys up front, their big names up front. But they didn't have any goaltending. Nobody had any goaltending. Heck, the one team that had goaltending was Winnipeg, and he was terrible. Connor Hellebuck was leaky as anything, and he made sure the Jets were done in a raging hurry. So no, I just don't see this as something that's going to capture the imagination of the hockey world. I think we've had series like that. I thought Panthers and Rangers was an electric series for the most part. But this doesn't really light up anything for me. I guess if I have a vested interest, just as a lifelong lover of the game and everything, it would be that there are some really good players on the Florida side that I'd like to see get rewarded with a ring. Guys who've been through a lot. Ekblad happens to be one of them. Tkachuk is the kind of player that you can't even conceive of how he'd have an NHL career without a cup. Barkov has really, really found a special niche in the game as the annual Selke winner in addition to being so much more. And maybe I've just got more sentiment toward that end because those guys are on the eastern side. I see them more often, deal with them more often, because I know very obviously you can say a lot of the same stuff that I just said about McDavid, about Leon Draisaitl, and maybe one or two other guys on the Edmonton side. But yeah, no, I am not envisioning a competitive final. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Dom, and it's in response to an episode from last week in which I was highlighting the Penguins' lack of a true trigger man up front on the power play. Dom says, DK, I don't think the answer is having just one trigger. A team needs multiple triggers. The Penguins just don't have those types of players. So who gets the blame for this? Is it Mike Sullivan in an effort to play the right way? The Penguins, in my opinion, are the weakest team physically in the NHL. No, they're not. That just doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry, I never do that in the middle of reading. But wow, no, that's just not accurate. That just doesn't work anymore, Dom continues, especially not in the playoffs. The Penguins are fun and frustrating to watch, tons of skill, but where's the grit? Dom, you're coming at me, obviously, with a lot of mixed messages here, okay? To go to your original one, that the Penguins don't have that trigger man, I agree with. The idea that you have multiple triggers or need to have multiple triggers, that doesn't really make much sense, because the way you're having someone, let's say, drop back into the slot or drop to the top of the circle in order to finish, that is a type of player. Michael Bunting can do the dropping back, and he can kick back out, to use a basketball term, but what you're not going to see from him is some, barrage of 45-foot snipes. He's just not that guy. He doesn't have that shot. A guy who does have that shot is Rickard Rakell. And Sullivan and his staff tried Rakell in that bumper role very early in the season. Didn't get a whole lot of attention or discussion, I recall, but it happened. And man, he just had no idea what he was doing. He could do the shooting. He's done it in the past, but he just did not get when to move here, when to move there. And I think this would have been a big, big difference maker for him, because you'll recall the previous season, over the final 2 months, he had 10 power play goals himself. Now, most of those were from the left side as opposed to a bumper spot, but what the heck, right? Goals are goals, and he was shooting them, and most of them were from some kind of distance. This is all I was talking about. It wasn't about who should shoot the puck or who shouldn't, although I did see that get misinterpreted with a couple of people responding to me about Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang needing to be the trigger guys. They're not on a point. That has nothing to do with triggering anything. I'm talking about forwards being moved into trigger spots. That's all. That's all this was about. That can be up high. That also can be down low, because the other player that I referenced in these playoffs that were ongoing at the time for the Rangers was Chris Kreider. Kreider's not a long-range shooter. Kreider gets you his goals all from within 10 feet of the blue paint. But the Rangers set it up so that he has multiple opportunities and multiple cracks at that puck. Hence, he's the trigger guy up front. That's what I was getting at here. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. And no, they are not the least physical team in the league. If you're referring to old school Don Cherry rock'em sock'em checking people through the glass, yeah, but that's not what physical hockey is anymore. Let's do this again tomorrow.